Even before the word God existed, a sound was already being used to heal, awaken, and transform the body from within. It wasn't taught. It wasn't written. It was lived. And if this video has found you, it's because that sound is trying to find you again. In the secret temples of ancient Egypt, only a group of initiates were allowed to chant it. And when they did, phenomena happened instantly. The body vibrated, the mind went quiet, and the soul awakened. And the most shocking part? That sound survived. It exists, and you're going to hear it here, but not yet. First, you need to understand why it was hidden for over 3,000 years, and what happens to those who dare to activate it incorrectly. Get ready, because this sound isn't just another mantra, it's a mirror, and when you chant it, it reveals what's vibrating inside you. The soul always knows how to heal itself. The challenge is to silence the mind enough to hear the sound of your own being. For centuries, even after the great centers of wisdom were destroyed, even after the temples were looted and the manuscripts burned, there was something that couldn't be eliminated: a frequency, invisible, undetectable by ordinary instruments, but alive, present. It kept vibrating beneath the surface of existence, as if silently waiting for the right ears to be ready to hear it. And from time to time, someone would emerge who could sense this subtle calling. In different parts of the world, completely distant traditions began reporting the same phenomenon. Monks in the Himalayas, Sufi mystics in the desert, Taoist masters in the mountains, shamans deep in the forests. They all said the same thing, using different words. There is a vibration that reorganizes the internal field of the being. It doesn't need an explanation or belief. When it happens, the body feels it. The mind goes quiet. The being enters such a deep state of coherence that reality itself seems to realign in response. These experiences weren't products of imagination or mystical delusions. Today, with advances in neuroscience and vibrational physics, it's already known that certain sounds and harmonic patterns have the power to synchronize the internal rhythms of the human body. Breathing, heartbeat, brainwave activity, creating a state of balance that the ancients called divine presence. But while science still tries to measure it, the initiates have always known how to feel it. A person doesn't need to understand the sound. Just being in contact with it is enough. In some inexplicable way, it touches layers of the self that are far beyond reason. And that's when everything starts to change. Old fears disappear effortlessly. Emotional blocks lose their grip. The perception of separation begins to dissolve, and a new feeling arises. Not one of euphoria, but of alignment. As if everything were finally in the right place. As if something inside, misaligned for lifetimes, had finally been repositioned. This kind of impact isn't superficial. It reaches the deepest parts of us. In accounts preserved by Hermetic traditions and records from Sufi masters, it's common to find descriptions like, "I felt like I had come home," or "There were no more questions, just a calm certainty that I was part of the whole." This feeling of cosmic belonging isn't a belief. It's an activated vibrational memory, a silent remembrance of what has always been true, but had been buried under layers of mental noise, emotional trauma, and social conditioning. But the most intriguing part is that this didn't only happen during rituals or moments of devotion. Many reported that, after continuous exposure to this frequency, spontaneous changes began to occur in their lives. Toxic relationships dissolved naturally. The body responded with greater vitality. Intuition became more frequent and reliable. It was as if the life around them began to reflect their new vibrational field. But not everyone was ready for what came next. The vibrational signature that only you carry. The most sensitive, most hidden, most protected point in our energy field begins to respond. The heart, not the biological organ, but that vibrational point the ancients called the throne of essence. From this center, our entire perception of reality transforms. In the fragmented papyri of Hermopolis, which recorded the symbolic teachings of Thoth's school, there are mentions of a rite of passage in which initiates were led into a chamber of complete darkness and absolute silence. In that place, they didn't seek vision or revelation. They sought to listen to the sound that didn't come from outside, but from within. The texts didn't speak of chakras. That concept didn't exist by that name yet. They referred to the heart as a mirror that, when touched by the right frequency, revealed what had been forgotten. The sound wasn't just sound, it was code. And that code, when it reached the heart in a pure state, that is, without defense, without hurry, without resistance, didn't just calm, it activated. Something began to move, a memory that didn't come from the mind, but from the soul. It wasn't a memory of events, but of presence, as if you suddenly remembered who you've always been before all the roles, traumas, achievements, or losses. This activation didn't happen through effort. It couldn't be forced. It arose spontaneously, like sunlight entering through a window that had finally been opened. And what you saw there wasn't a new version of yourself, but the original being, the aligned vibration, the intact consciousness, the core untouched by the world's programming. The sound that activated this didn't need to be loud. Often it was almost inaudible to physical ears, but the heart heard it, and upon hearing, it expanded, not in size, but in field. The feeling was one of inner lightness, but also of power, as if something sacred had been awakened and was ready to take the lead. The inner temple walls began to vibrate. The person knew, without knowing how to explain, that something had changed forever. That's why this sound was never chanted outwardly. It wasn't used to impress anyone. It was too sacred to be displayed. Its purpose wasn't to create a spectacle, but to open portals. And the main one, the portal of return to the self. When this portal opened, the previous frequency no longer made sense. Thoughts lost their grip. Dramas lost their weight. Identity began to dissolve. Not like someone losing themselves, but like someone for the first time finding themselves. From that moment on, there was no turning back. Because once the essence's vibration is felt, it becomes a reference. The body recognizes it. The soul longs for it. And everything misaligned with it starts becoming unbearable. Not out of rejection, but because of vibrational incompatibility. And that changes everything. The inner world no longer accepts the old noise. And that's when something even deeper begins to move. An internal pattern. A silent sound that has always been there, but that the rush of the mind never lets you hear clearly. That sound is your vibrational signature. It's not a melody or a specific mantra. It's an invisible tone that your being emits constantly. And even though no one can hear it with their ears, everything around you perceives it. People, situations, choices, even the repeated patterns in your life respond to that frequency. Every being is born with this signature. It's unique, like an energetic fingerprint that represents who you are at your core. But over the course of life, this original vibration gets covered up by layers. Layers of fear, guilt, expectation. Conditionings you inherited, absorbed, believed. External voices that drowned out your inner vibration until it became nearly imperceptible. And so, without even realizing it, most people begin to live in dissonance with their own nature. This disconnection isn't visible at first. It shows up as dissatisfaction without a clear cause. as the repetition of destructive patterns, as deep fatigue even after resting, as a constant feeling of living someone else's life, or carrying a void nothing can fill. Not because something is missing from the outside, but because what's vibrating inside is muffled. And that's why the sound preserved in the traditions of Thoth doesn't act like a remedy. It doesn't treat symptoms. It doesn't interfere with external events. It simply emits a pattern so pure, so primordial, that when it comes into contact with your field, everything that's out of tune starts to fall apart, not by force, but by vibrational incompatibility. The sound doesn't impose, it reveals. And when your signature begins to reappear, everything changes. It's like your body says, "This is how I vibrate when I'm whole." The soul recognizes that memory. It expands. The field reorganizes. And what you were trying to change by force starts to lose its grip naturally. Relationships that no longer support your frequency fade away. Repetitive thoughts lose their power. Emotions you carried for years simply dissolve because they no longer vibrate at the same level. But maybe the most impressive part is realizing that the moment you start vibrating as who you truly are, the things that once seemed distant or out of reach begin to find you. Not because of magic, but because of alignment. You stop chasing, and you start attracting, because the field around you now clearly communicates who you are, and the universe responds. And all of this happens not because you became someone else, but because you finally managed to access what was always inside you, what had been muffled, distorted, hidden under the layers of survival. Now, for the first time in a long time, you can feel the sound of your own presence. The revealed sound, the mantra, Chu. It's at this exact point in the journey, when your vibrational signature begins to emerge clearly, that the sound appears, not as something new, but as something that has always been trying to reach you. It doesn't arise as external information. It pulses, as if the very field around you starts to vibrate with something you can't explain, but instantly recognize. It's the turning point. And the sound, kept secret for millennia, is simple, direct, and so powerful that it cannot be tamed by doctrines. This sound is HU. It's not a word with a logical meaning. HU doesn't carry a definition. It carries vibration. And that's exactly why it goes beyond the intellect. It doesn't need to be understood, only chanted. It emerges as an ancestral vibration that rises from the center of the self and projects outward as a direct beam to the origin. This was the sound practiced in silence among Egyptian initiates, later preserved by Sufi masters and passed down within the closed circles of truth seekers. Thoth called it the breath of essence, and that name wasn't poetic, it was literal, because HU is born from the breath, but not just any breath. It arises when the air is filled with intention, when the sound carries the vibration of purpose. When chanted consciously, Hu follows a very specific internal path. It moves through the throat center, vibrates the chest, descends to the solar plexus, and from there radiates throughout the entire energy field. The effect isn't immediate like an explosion. It's silent and progressive. The vibration begins to untie knots, to clear areas of confusion, to dissolve dense patterns. Little by little, the body feels it. The heart opens, the mind slows down, and a new frequency begins to take up space inside. HU reorganizes, recalibrates, restores, not as an external miracle, but as a natural realignment with your own source. This sound doesn't depend on elaborate rituals or a specific environment. It doesn't need leaders or interpreters, because it's not knowledge, it's activation. The power of HU lies precisely in its simplicity, and that's why it was protected for so many centuries. because it can only truly be accessed by those willing to be silent, to feel, and to remember. To remember that there's nothing outside that needs to be worshipped. What needs to be activated is within, and HU is the key. But here's something that must be said clearly. Knowing what the sound is changes nothing. Just knowing that the sound is HU doesn't transform anything, because the power of the sound isn't in the name, it's in how it's used, and that's what separates those who merely hear it from those who truly vibrate with it. That's exactly why HU cannot be reduced to a spiritual technique or just another mystical tool. It wasn't created. It was perceived. And when emitted with awareness, it begins to produce real, measurable, and deeply transformative effects in the human field. The body reacts. The mind responds, and the energy field silently reorganizes itself. Studies in neurophysiology, functional magnetic resonance imaging, and heart rate variability show that prolonged vibrational sounds, like HU, directly activate the vagus nerve. This activation releases neurotransmitters responsible for the sensation of deep relaxation and for reducing inflammatory processes. The person feels a kind of internal decompression. And it's not subtle. In many cases, it's immediate. The heart rate slows, the breath deepens, and the body enters a state of spontaneous repair. At the same time, the two brain hemispheres, which usually operate in distinct and sometimes uncoordinated patterns, enter into synchronization. This neural coherence promotes mental clarity, full focus, and a state that many describe as peaceful lucidity. It's as if the mind stops jumping from stimulus to stimulus and, for the first time, can simply be. Awareness doesn't expand through effort, but because there's no longer noise disrupting its perception. But perhaps the most powerful effect of HU happens in the center of the chest. The sound reverberates in the heart. And when that happens, the electromagnetic field generated by this organ, which is already naturally the strongest in the body, expands. Literally, the person's personal magnetism increases. Their field begins to emit a clearer, more stable, more vibrant frequency. And the world around starts to notice that vibration, even without knowing why. The ancients knew this. In Thoth's mystery school, this phenomenon was called Sekhem Wakening. Sekhem was the name given to the life force that animates all existence. When it awakens, the body stops operating in survival mode and begins to function in expression mode. In other words, energy is no longer used to protect, resist, or hide. It's used to create, manifest, and radiate. That's the moment when vibration stops being just an internal state and becomes a presence that transforms everything around it. This awakening doesn't require effort, but it does require truth, because HU doesn't mask, it doesn't cover up, it reveals. And if there is inner noise, resistance, or repressed emotion, the sound brings it all to the surface, not to punish, but to cleanse. And this is where an often overlooked detail lies. HU as the vibrational mirror of your emotion. Contrary to what many people think, HU is not a magic code that changes your vibration on its own. It's not a tool that improves you. It's a mirror, a vibrational mirror, and what it reflects is exactly what you're carrying in that moment. If you chant "Who" with an open heart, in a true state of surrender, gratitude, or silent love, it returns that state in the form of vibrational expansion. The field opens, the energy flows, the connection happens. But if you chant "Hue" with fear, with resistance, with urgency or doubt, the sound only amplifies that state. It doesn't mask. It doesn't distort. It just reveals. That's why so many people have different experiences with the same sound. because HU itself is neutral. It only vibrates what you bring to it. In Hermetic records, this was treated as a golden principle. Sound doesn't transform before it reveals. First, it puts you face to face with your own frequency. It shows you where you are. And only then, if there is truth, it reorganizes the field based on what's real, not what you want to appear to be. That's why, even in silence, HU can trigger tears, goosebumps, forgotten memories coming back. Not out of nostalgia, but because the vibration begins to break through the crust of what's been repressed. This revelation isn't always comfortable, but it's freeing, because when you see what's truly vibrating inside you, you're no longer a prisoner of the unconscious. You stop living on autopilot. You begin to choose what you want to vibrate. And when that choice is conscious, HU becomes a bridge. It connects what you feel with what you emit. And that's when the real magic begins. Because by repeating HU daily, with presence and intention, you begin to establish internal coherence. Emotion, thought, sound, and breath fall into sync. It's as if the parts of your being that were misaligned, body, mind, energy, and soul, start moving together. That's the coherence that attracts. That's the vibration that transforms. And with this practice, something even more unexpected happens. It's not just what's inside that changes. What's outside starts to respond differently. People who had disappeared from your life reappear with a new attitude. Situations that seemed stuck begin to move without you forcing them. Paths that were once unclear become visible. Not because the world changed, but because your vibration became so clear that it started shaping the field around you. This is the reorganization of the etheric field. The invisible field that surrounds you begins to align with the vibration you emit authentically. And this field isn't abstract. It's the link between you and every experience in your reality. When it changes, everything changes. Relationships either come into resonance or dissolve. Opportunities appear where there was silence before. Time seems to bend to support what's in tune with your new state. And the most powerful realization is that you're not doing this through effort. You're not manipulating. You're simply vibrating. And the right vibration reorganizes everything, because the field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. And when you vibrate from your essence, the inner sound becomes stronger than any outer noise. The world no longer pressures you in the same way. Other people's opinions lose their power. Old fears lose their echo. And what used to define you no longer makes sense. This is where the practice takes root. This is where life begins to change. Not because you fought, but because you finally aligned. HU is not about changing the world. It's about changing the vibration you emit within it. And once that vibration is firmly established, the path opens, without resistance, without control, without needing to force anything. Reality begins to bend in response to your coherence. The secret technique: how to use HU. Now that you've already felt the vibration shift, now that your field has started to respond, and the silent sound of your essence has made space, it's time to cross the bridge between feeling and sustaining. Because activation doesn't end when you understand. It begins when you practice. And Thoth made this very clear in his oral teachings. It's not enough to know. You must live the sound. And living the sound means practicing it with full presence every day until it stops being an external vibration and becomes an extension of who you are. This practice doesn't come from books or modern formulas. It was passed down through generations of initiates from the Hermetic school, preserved in silence because it couldn't be made common. It was shared only with those who were ready to listen with their body, not with their ears. The body is the temple, and HU, the sacred breath that activates the inner chambers of that temple. This technique is simple, yet powerful. And now that you've made it this far, you're ready to receive it. Find a quiet place, a space where you can be fully present, without rush, without interruptions. The space doesn't need to be sacred, but your state must be. Sit with your spine upright, not rigid, just allowing energy a clear path to flow. The spine is your channel of ascension. Closing your eyes isn't symbolic. It's a return inward. When you close your eyes, you open your inner vision. And it's with this vision that the practice begins. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Don't just fill your lungs. Expand your abdomen, as if making room for something ancestral to settle inside you. It's important that you're aware of the air coming in. It's not just oxygen. It carries information. It connects worlds. Hold your breath for 2 seconds and bring all your attention to the center of your chest. Don't force feelings. Just feel the space. There is a field there that recognizes the sound even before it's made. Now, exhale through your mouth while chanting the sound. Hu-oo. Let the sound vibrate in the deepest part of your chest. The tone should be low, prolonged, continuous, like a thread connecting your identity to the source. Don't worry about how it sounds. HU doesn't require vocal beauty. It requires vibrational coherence. Chant as if you're reminding your body what the sound of your origin is. Feel it traveling down to the solar plexus, filling the belly, reverberating at the base of your spine. That's where your field anchors. This chant is not to be done once or twice. Keep the flow for 7 minutes. That time isn't random. In the ancient initiation circles, 7 minutes was the minimum cycle for the sound to break through surface-level mental chatter and start dissolving subconscious noise. In the first minutes, you might notice your mind trying to take over. It'll want to distract you, judge, interfere. But keep going. After a few cycles, the body begins to sync with the sound, and when that happens, everything changes. At the end of the 7 minutes, go silent. Don't stop abruptly. Just let the sound fade until silence takes over, and remain in that state for 3 more minutes. This is the most important part of the practice. This is where HU transforms from sound into presence. The field adjusts, the vibration integrates, and a new frequency stabilizes in your being. In this silence, you're not waiting for anything. You're remembering everything. It's in this emptiness that essence blooms. During these final minutes, emotions might come up. Old memories, unexplained sensations, chills. This is natural. The sound has reorganized what was stuck. It touched parts of your field that had been dormant for years. Let it come. Don't hold back. Don't analyze. Just breathe and allow everything to dissolve. The body knows what to do when the mind gets out of the way. This practice should be done for 7 consecutive days, preferably at the same times, so the field gets used to the new frequency and begins building a new vibrational pattern. You don't need to believe, you need to practice. Because HU isn't activated by belief, it's activated by conscious repetition. And over time, you'll realize you don't even need to vocalize anymore. The sound starts vibrating on its own, like a silent field that surrounds and guides you. After 7 days, you'll start noticing subtle but undeniable changes. Situations that once required effort begin to flow. You'll become more sensitive to what's real and what's noise. Decisions will come with more clarity. Heavy emotions will stop sticking to you. And most importantly, your presence will become magnetic. People will notice, even if they don't know why. Because HU begins shaping not just your inner field, but everything that comes into contact with it. But the most transformative part is still to come. Because when HU stops being a technique and becomes part of who you are, the entire world begins to behave differently around you. And what happens after that can no longer be explained. And then something quiet happens. Without forcing it, without even realizing exactly when, the sound stops being an exercise. It dissolves as a technique and reappears as a state. You're walking down the street and you feel that vibration in your chest. You're in silence, and yet the sound pulses inside, not as noise, but as a living frequency. You, which you once chanted with intention, now vibrates on its own. It becomes part of your field naturally. And in that moment, a truth becomes clear. You weren't learning a sound. You were remembering something that was already yours. The feeling isn't one of achievement. It's one of recognition. There's no euphoria, only a peace that fills every space in your body. You begin to notice your presence affecting the environment. People around you lower their voices when they speak to you. Situations that used to demand energy now resolve with a single gesture, or don't even need to happen. You become a point of vibrational coherence, a field of subtle order, and none of this comes from ego. It comes from the sound vibrating within your being, constant, silent, but fully alive. It's as if HU merges with your breath, with your way of seeing, with how you occupy space. The words you choose carry more weight, your listening becomes deeper, and your energy starts sending a clear message to the universe. You are present, fully present, no longer someone searching for alignment, but someone who has become alignment itself. This state is not rare for the initiated, but for someone who has lived in noise for so long, it feels miraculous, because everything slows down, and at the same time, everything flows. If you've made it this far, that already says a lot about your frequency. Now write this in the comments. The sound awakened something in me. That phrase isn't just a comment. It's a vibrational anchor confirming your resonance with this knowledge. And if you want to support this channel more directly, there's a link pinned in the first comment. Or, if you prefer, you can use the Thanks a Lot button here on YouTube. And don't leave just yet. A video has been specially selected for you to continue this awakening journey. It's right there on the screen. Click now and I'll meet you there, in the next step of this frequency.